Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, sorry for the longer than I thought adjournment, but if we all can be seated, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, taking some advice, but before I go any further, I think that Councillor Longden would like to say something.
I hold my colleagues over here in very high regard. They're hard-working people and they do their best for the people of this borough. I'm not prepared to sit here and listen to the abuse from the other side, coming right and left and centre. On that basis, as well, Mr Mayor, in defence of my own future, I suppose, I will not sit in a kangaroo court, and I will now resign my post on the Cabinet in order to get a fair hearing on the Standards Committee, where I hope my comments will then be heard and made public. And that's all I've got to say at this point in time. So as of now, I give my immediate resignation from the Cabinet.
Then, Councillor Wilson, so going on your notion now,
what I was going to offer honourable response from Councillor Longden, and I do generally outside of this hold him in quite high esteem outside of this chamber. I will withdraw the motion on the basis that he has done the honourable thing and resigned from the Cabinet. On that basis only, I will withdraw the motion with leave of the Council. I believe it has to have approval of the Council. Phil's nodding. But I thank Councillor Longden for doing the honourable thing and resigning his post on the Cabinet.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, seconded then, yeah.
That's all that has been outlined by Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
So, move to the vote on that. So we're voting on Councillor Longden is resigning his position as Cabinet member. We're voting on withdrawing the motion. Withdrawing the motion by Councillor Wilson. So if we could do a show of hands on that, please.
Mr Mayor.
So all those in favour of withdrawing the motion? Against? Abstain? Okay, thank you, that is carried. Right, moving on to the next motion. Can I ask Councillor Wilson, first signatory to the requisition, to move to what was the first motion but is now the second motion? Green bins, please.
Green bins has been, I think it's fair to say, aside from the borough plan, one of the most contentious issues that councillors have faced in a long time. I know that certainly my inbox has had a number of responses, and I think it's fair to say others, certainly on my side of the chamber, have had that. Let us be clear. It was a decision by the controlling group to implement this charge, and having officers of this council, when people ring up saying all councillors approved it, speak to your councillor, is misleading the public in the extreme, because it is making those of us on this side complicit in a decision we objected to and strongly object to on this side of the chamber. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't be there at Cabinet due to a family wedding. But as I understand it, my deputy leader gave a full-throated response to the proposal, and we have been working quite literally between myself and the officers and Councillor Golby day and night on what we can do to mitigate or reverse the charges for the green bins. That is where all our energy has gone on to, and that will come out in the shadow budget response. But it is negligent of this council for 5 members to approve a policy without having first even considered an equality impact assessment on what it will do. Surely, before you put an item to Cabinet to start charging people for the privilege of having their green bins emptied, you should at least consider the equality impact it will have across this borough. When I spoke to officers before this went to Cabinet, I was informed no assessment had been undertaken. I then subsequently learned afterwards that an assessment was undertaken after Cabinet had made a decision to implement their green bin tax. They had the meeting on the 31st of October. The equality impact assessment, which I have here, is dated 16th of November 2018. Now, unless the portfolio holder has a TARDIS, there is no way that she could have foreseen what this was going to say before voting on it, or even proposing it as the portfolio holder. I think that's a gross dereliction of duty to actually consider what is supposed to be one of the fundamental corporate aims of this authority, which is to reduce inequality within our borough. Now, officers said, although they couldn't quantify this, and I accept that data was hard to get by, but their gut feeling, and I'm having a lot of gut feelings at the moment tonight, is that that there would be some wards which would be disproportionately affected, and it would be logical to assume that those would be areas where there was greater deprivation. So we hear mighty accusations from the party opposite. We've introduced this because of austerity, because we've sent people to food banks, even though it was this government that allowed the DWP to send people to food banks, and the Labour Work and Pension Secretary banned it to allow people to go and get help. They've blamed everyone else but themselves. Yet we have lost £500,000 on car parking. You spent £200,000 on a climbing tower which hardly anyone has seen and is costing us way too much money. You've spent £2 million on a depot. You have actually subsidised Poundland to the tune of £250,000 a year, but we cannot keep the green bins going. How absurd. And today, I have had further information which I think is quite revealing, because in the equality impact assessment it says, and I quote, "The proposed charge for the collection of green waste will impact on the whole borough equally." Well, let's look at the evidence. Bearing in mind that most wards average around 3,000 properties per ward, we know we have to go and deliver them as councillors. What do you think the take-up actually is for the portfolio holder's own ward? 3,000? 500? 1,000? 226. Wenbrook, 287, the leader's own seat. Kingswood, 343. Camp Hill, the deputy leader's seat, 356. Barpool, 371. Poplar, 375. The highest proportion, 1140, is my ward in Whitestone. So you can see, just on the basis of that evidence alone, it has disproportionately affected people across this borough. Now, they say that people have been forced into poverty. £40 means the difference between putting food on your table and clothing...
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay, thank you. Does that fall in a seconder? Councillor Evans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Which has been proposed by Councillor Wilson, and in doing so, with your permission, I would like to make my speech now. The continuous financial mismanagement of this Labour administration is the very reason why this council has had to implement the green bin tax on residents. a £2 million overspend at Gresham Road, £500,000 lost in parking revenue since 2015, and £200,000 on a climbing wall which is never seen in the borough. But what angers me the most, and what I deem most tragic about this, is your lack of respect for the residents of this borough. How dare you go out there and lie to the electorate? You said that you would, and I quote, protect free garden waste collections. This was on a poster with the headline, Labour on the side of working people. Since the hard-left militant takeover of the Labour Party, since Corbyn's election as party leader, the only people you stand up for are the Islington metropolitan elite and not hard-working taxpayers in communities like % of the borough voted against having a Labour council in May. A lot of my residents have been absolutely shocked by the lack of communication they have received regarding Labour's green bin tax. The leaflets attached to bins have been disproportionate. Some streets have had 2 over recent weeks, and some streets have had none. And I know that's happened universally across the borough, speaking to some of my colleagues. The leaflets themselves, I think, could have been a lot better. There was a big emphasis on the leaflets about signing up for the scheme via the council's website. That's all well and good, but what about those vulnerable groups in our society who don't have access to the internet? The Office for National Statistics says that 56% of those over the age of 75 don't have access to the internet whatsoever. Although I continually criticise this administration for wasting £30,000 a year on the council's Pravda In Touch magazine, you did put the appropriate funding forward at the budget last year to continue the issue of the magazine. It would have been a perfect opportunity for you to use the In Touch magazine to tell residents about this significant change in this council service. That way, every single resident in the borough would have known about it. In theory, because some streets don't actually get it, but hey-ho. Again, it highlights why the In Touch magazines are a complete waste of time, and I have to question why the Labour administration continues to fund it. Mr Mayor, every week I read the Nuneaton News on a Wednesday. Since the announcement, I have not once seen any sort of A4 infographic in the paper to advertise the change. I do appreciate that it costs money to put advertisements in newspapers, but for such a big change in this council service, it's something that I, to be honest, would have expected to have seen. On the 21st of December, it was reported online that you made a U-turn on the decision not to collect unwanted green bins. In a press release, the council said it will collect unwanted green bins as of March of this year. One of the questions I would like to ask, and I know I'm not allowed to ask questions, but one of the questions I feel the leader of the council really needs to answer in the near future to give greater clarity for residents is whether or not the storage of these unwanted green bins has been considered, and what are you going to do with the unwanted green bins once they're stored? Not Gresham Road, no. In conclusion, Mr Mayor, I will be supporting the motion proposed by Councillor Wilson tonight. I think it's wholly unprofessional to conduct an equality impact assessment nearly a month after the decision was made. And for this very reason, it's only right that the appropriate action is taken against the portfolio holder for central services and refuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Jackson.
If the opposition had seriously wanted to seek to do this, then it should have called the decision in when it was made. It failed to do so. The Conservatives did not call this in, and it seeks an inappropriate measure to try to change a decision.
Correctly at the start, she was moving a point of order. What she's saying is a statement or a speech, far from a point of order. If she wishes to make a speech, I have no issue about that, but let's call it what it is. It's not a point of order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Jackson, is it a point of order?
It is a point of order.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
The Constitution, as written, I believe it fails to meet the test of lawfulness. Accordingly, Mr Mayor, I do not feel this motion should be discussed. It takes no account of the separate roles of Cabinet and Council. It implies an alteration to the budget which has not been subject to a proper assessment of the financial implications by the Section 151 officer, the head of finance, who, amongst other things, would have to certify that the proposed change maintained a balanced budget, and Council cannot require Cabinet to impose a different fee to that already set. Mr Mayor, I therefore believe we cannot hold discussion on a motion that is unlawful. If the Conservatives believe the decision was wrong, they should have called the matter in. They failed to do so.
Councillor Wilson.
Council, please, because I understand that we were having a point of order. A point of order does not move a motion, so there is nothing to second. Now, if we're going to start playing games across the chamber, can we at least play by the same rule book, please, Mr Mayor?
Right. So the way I see it, that wasn't a motion, it was a point of order. But Councillor Jackson, you've called in the legality of the motion put by Councillor Wilson into question.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. A question of the legal officer, as this has actually been through the legal officer already, and the head of paid service. So actually, she's calling their judgment into question, not ours, for raising the motion.
Started off by saying this motion is in accordance with the Constitution. Mr Mayor, I am saying... My microphone is actually on.
Some of the banter and that cut down. Julie, Councillor Jackson, can you move your mic a little bit closer to the mouth, please?
What I moved was that I accept this motion that Councillor Wilson approved may be in accordance with the Constitution, but I believe it is unlawful.
Whether this is actually unlawful or not, and if so, can we have an explanation as to why it's been allowed?
Mr Mayor, I did actually run all three of the motions tonight past the legal officer, and they were accepted by the head of paid service as valid motions under the Constitution.
Phil, can you take over, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The position is this. Councillor Wilson is quite right. Both the head of paid service and myself have seen the motions, and we did indeed say that they accorded with the Constitution. The Constitution says that there are very specific grounds upon which a motion can be rejected by the head of paid service. Lawfulness isn't one of them. In the context of the discussion that I had with Councillor Wilson, I did point out that there was a specific word which he has retained in the motion, which relates to the relationship between Cabinet and Council, and I think it's to that Councillor Jackson is referring, and it is this. The law specifically discriminates between the role of Council and the role of the Executive, and states that that Council cannot require the Executive to do anything so long as the Executive acts within the budget and policy framework set by Council. In the context of this particular matter, the issue is that the motion is requiring the leader of the Council to do something that the Cabinet have already determined, and therefore it's not something that the Council can require the leader to do. There is case law which explicitly says that for Council to attempt to do so would be a fetter on the discretion of the Executive to make a proper decision. So in the context of that, the wording require makes it very difficult for me to say that this is a lawful motion. And I think I suggested a different form of words to Councillor Wilson when he came to see me, but obviously the motion is as it is.
Okay, thank you for that, Phil. Right, so on that grounds, then, as the wording is unlawful.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Right. So everybody's shouting out point of order and standing up. I haven't even looked up yet. So, would anybody like to do this properly? Councillor Croft.
Point of order is unconstitutional. He described it as being out of bounds in terms of the relationship between the executive and the council in the Constitution. So why did he not say this when it was put to him beforehand?
Okay.
Well, the budgetary motion about green bins hasn't actually been before full council. It is part of the wider budget implications that will come to council in February the 18th, that the council notes all the work which has gone on within year, adopts it, and any further action which the council may take, and ratifies that as the approved budget. Therefore, this council has not yet set a budgetary framework in respect of whether the green bins is acceptable or not. We've started charging for it. The Cabinet have consulted amongst 5 people and, 227 random people on the streets, but not a full council. It is not a full council decision. It is not going behind a full council decision. Therefore, it would be appropriate to refer it back to Cabinet as part of the budget setting process, so that they can then reconsider and bring, if they wish to, that as a budget recommendation on February the 18th. We're asking them to reconsider as part of the budgetary process.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Wilson. But regardless of anything that's been said, really, the wording in the motion is not lawful, so cannot accept this tonight.
Mr. Mayor, may I interject?
Yes, Councillor.
Could I then that we replace the word require with request? I think that would meet your test, would it, Councillor Richardson?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay, so an amendment has been put forward. It's been put forward and seconded. And so now we have to move to vote on the amendment.
I can't remember who. Oh, it was Councillor Tromans, I believed, moved an amendment. That amendment can only be allowed after a vote of full council, because it is an alteration to a printed motion. I believe that's the case, Mr. Mayor.
Right, so now we move to a vote on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
So, Councillor Tromans, would you like to repeat your amendment, please?
My amended motion is exactly as printed, only instead of the word require, to require the leader of the council, it says to request the leader of the council. So, change one word. Do we get to debate this as well, in which case can I carry on with my speech?
But a debate on the amendment.
Great, thank you. We're all on the same page then. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Condacall, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'll just finish my
right,
speech.
okay, yes.
Yeah.
So go on, Councillor Tremens.
Yeah, thank you very much. That we're having to bring this forward is, as has been touched on before, there just isn't the clear communication with the public. There hasn't been the forethought. It's all been done on the hoof. I mean, it transpired that the Cabinet were warned, or certainly members of the controlling group were warned that there was budgetary pressure before the last election. So is it any wonder the public are asking me, as has been asked tonight, what was all of their election leaflets about, saying they were going to protect the green bin service when they already knew it was under pressure? And then within days of the election happening, they're instructing officers to come up with this plan to start charging. And this is mid-financial year. So the other thing that people are asking me is, well, how is it cropped up mid-year? What's happened? Did they get their sums?
Councillor
Troman's moving to the main proposition that was put on the papers. He either wants to speak on the amendment or he doesn't.
Just it's almost identical, but for one word, to the original motion. So, so the second thing is, I'm being asked to explain, and I can't. Is it mismanagement that they can get the budget so wrong it doesn't even last a year? And people want to know what's the cause of the in-year deficit. Is it, other mishaps? Is it other miscalculations? Is it? You can keep interrupting all you like.
Councillor Tremens, Councillor Pomfret.
Amendment being moved is that they change a word. So I'd like to hear some reasons for changing the word if Councillor Tromans is speaking to the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Tremens.
The various gaffes, the mismanagement, the £200,000 wasted on the climbing wall, 2 million overspent on the depot, £500,000 lost on the car parking charges. It's these things happening in year which no doubt have caused this in-year pressure. But the whole point about these kind of things happening is that the council shouldn't be making the mistakes that cause this, and if these things do happen, they should be using reserves in year, not dumping this on the hoof on the population. We have reserves for that very purpose. Or they could consider using the new homes bonus. We get £1.4 million a year from the new homes bonus, and the government says, specifically, it should be used for frontline services. In fact, in their guidance, they even suggest bin collections is being one of the purposes of that money. But no, instead we have this rolled out that people don't understand without consultation, without thinking about the impacts of it, and no wonder the public are up in arms, and rightly so. They should have cushioned the public from this for the financial year and then gone through a proper process. I mean, if we need any more proof that things are being done on the hoof by a group that has lost control, then we only have to look at the U-turns. We only have to look at you've got to keep hold of your green bin, and then as soon as they come under pressure, they say, OK, well, we'll gather the green bins back in. But we don't know how we'll do that. We're not exactly sure when, and we don't know what we'll do with them if we do bring them back. And we certainly haven't...
To the notice of the motion.
So, I'm sorry, I am going to up in arms. You've not dealt with this well. You've not dealt with it as a prudent council would. It's showing that you're in disarray and just making stuff up mid-year on the hoof, and I will be supporting this.
Councillor Pomfret, would you like to come back on that? And then I've got other speakers.
We're speaking on the amendment. I haven't heard one single reason, presumably because there aren't any, why we should accept this amendment. So I'm not going to vote, obviously, in favour of the amendment when Councillor Tromans has spoken for however many minutes it is, and he hasn't come up with one single reason. And he's the guy who proposed that it was so important to change this one word. But he
Mr. Mayor, didn't need to say it, as it had just been explained by the director, that the reason the word had to change is because the word require was too strong and could be deemed to be giving an instruction which is illegal or unconstitutional or whatever. So rather than have that, we clarified it with the word request. So that was already explained. I didn't think...
I'm going to try and say this again, because it obviously ain't going over. Everybody just keeps jumping up. I don't want everybody just keep jumping up and then pressing the switch when they're up. I've got a list of speakers, so if we can just try and get through tonight's business, I'd appreciate it all. Councillor Walmsley.
Called so early.
So the motion, as Councillor Tromans just put down, actually resolves and requests that the leader and the council portfolio holder produce an amendment to the policy to protect the most vulnerable and residents in our community. And I hope to offer them a negative of assistance in how they could perhaps do this. Given that what we could do is to protect the most vulnerable, we could actually protect all residents at the same time. Quite clearly, as Councillor Tromans already alluded to, we have the New Homes Bonus total pot for 1920, £1.4 million, that at the moment is not ring-fenced. It can be used in any way. Other councils around the area use it to protect frontline services, which is what we could do with this frontline service and protecting the most vulnerable residents at the same time. And we could use some of that towards plugging the gap for the green bins. In fact, as Councillor Tromans has already alluded, the New Homes Bonus, the document which sets it up by the government, page 3, paragraph 7, states, for example, they may, and I quote, for example, they may wish to offer council tax discounts to local residents, support frontline services like bin collections, or improve local facilities like playgrounds and parks. And actually, what we could do is we can free up some money from this immediately if the Cabinet wished to do so, seeing as they are taking other adjustments in year at the moment, that could immediately protect the most vulnerable in our society to have to pay no charge at all. In fact, it could actually allow anybody in our society, in our council and our authority, to not have to pay any charge at all, and would be completely permissible. We see neighbouring councils, other West Midlands councils, Walsall, Solihull, Rugby, in fact, have all used 100% of their New Homes Bonus to date, protecting frontline services. And that has meant for some councils, actually it's an extra £20 million since 2011. By comparison, here in Nuneaton and Bedworth, which are much smaller than the large authorities of Walsall and Solihull, for example, much smaller, but we've actually received £10 million, and actually we've not used a penny of that in protecting our frontline services. So I think what we could do today very clearly, and hopefully this is a helpful suggestion to Cabinet, that we can go ahead, we can push forward, we can resolve and support this motion, and there is an easy, simple way out for them right here, right now, or the next Cabinet meeting, where they could decide to change the policy, to fund the policy completely, protecting the most vulnerable residents in our society, as well as every resident from having to pay this charge. This is, to be clear, a choice, not a necessity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Walmsley. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. They're distress situations, distress purchases, if you like. They're unpopular by their nature. But when you're managing something, you often have to make unpopular decisions for the right reasons. Well, given what you've done with the Borough Plan, Gresham Road, the other things we've heard about, I think it's pretty certain to say you've got unpopular nailed right down, guys. But as far as doing the right thing goes, I don't think this really hits the mark, certainly not with our residents. As has already been said, I've heard from more residents about this than I have about anything apart from the Borough Plan. And the majority of people that have contacted me have come from Kersley. You know, one of the areas with the lowest take-up of this green bin tax payment. And funny enough, everybody that's contacted me has been against it. Not a single person has said, great idea, why aren't we do this before? We've heard about how it's been made up on the hoof. We've heard about how there was no proper impact assessment. I just wonder, people have told me about the fact that they suspect that it's going to be dumped in ditches and verges around the area. Some people are planning on taking it to the tip. People are thinking about sharing, that type of thing. But when people are taking it to the tip, did you factor in the extra cost to business with congestion, the extra pollution that's going to be on the roads because of this? We're going to have thousands of residents potentially going to the tip, whereas we have a few lorries going around collecting it more efficiently, all because you've chosen to introduce this tax when you had other choices available to you. And it just looks to residents like it's another decision, like many of the Borough Plan decisions that seem to be carried out behind closed doors, in secret, no proper consultation. We thought you'd have learnt from the Borough Plan to consult properly. It just seems you're not getting the message, folks. So I'm just wondering, we've seen little flyers that have been attached to bins instead of proper communication. You see them laying in the wet ground where people haven't picked them up because they've dissolved before they've come off the bins. So it's just the communication's been appalling. The decision's a bad decision. You have the chance to change that decision. At the last council meeting in December, I asked the portfolio holder for the dates of the meetings when this idea first came about, because it was suspiciously close to the election when literature was delivered promising that you wouldn't introduce this charge. The portfolio holder said she'd write to me with the dates. So when I didn't hear anything, I contacted her by email. The answer I got back was, I can't remember. I asked her to go back to officers and confirm from their diaries when those dates might have been. I'm still waiting for a response. All of this sort of gives the appearance that the portfolio here was complicit in doing this bad decision, or incompetent. Now, I wouldn't suggest for any minute that she's complicit or dishonest in any single way, but I think the residents of this borough have made their minds upon the sheer incompetence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, I've still got a number of speakers on here. Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, Mr. Meaner. I'm very happy to speak in favour of this amended motion and against this policy, firstly because this charge from the Labour Group, which is effectively a tax on green bins, is such a fundamentally regressive policy. Now, there are some parts of the town and some residents who can afford it and can pay it, and they won't like doing it, but they will. But if you're struggling and you have to pay the rent, or if you're on a fixed income, or if you're not sure that you're going to be in work, or if you need to make sure you can cover the next food bill, or if you need to find money to pay the school uniforms, if you need to pay the heating and utility bills, then 40 quid lump sum is nothing to be sniffed at. Yeah. Now, those people on fixed incomes or limited means with tight budgets will then have to make a choice. Do they stump up the extra cash when they're already hard up against it, or will they give up their green bin? And that's what the council seems to expect, since the report, when it went to Cabinet, said that only about 37.5% of people would take this up. What sort of policy is that? It's a policy effectively designed to be regressive, to price out the poor and the squeezed middle and out of a service that the affluent parts of town will continue to enjoy. And this is from the party that tells us that it is the party of the underprivileged and the needy and the poor. And it is the Labour Party that is now putting a greater burden on the backs of the people and the people who can afford it least. And we've discovered that they were planning for it from quite some time back, even when they were promising not to do it in the election. That's a Nick Clegg policy. Now, as I've said before on another occasion, the council is acting like it is not on people's side. And it's all very well to say, as the portfolio holder did, that the service is opt-in and that you don't have to use it, it's discretionary. But what about the pensioner who happens to enjoy gardening, who's on a fixed income? What about the young family who have to put more into the black bin because children make a lot of mess, and then they need to use the green bin for the food waste? What about them? And alarmingly little thought seems to have been given to this, Mr. Mayor. The equality impact assessment for this policy was not done when the policy was approved by Cabinet, and when it was laughable. I mean, the assessment says that it will impact on the whole borough equally. Mr. Mayor, that is a ridiculous statement. How can it do that when it is the most deprived areas that will lose out most of this service? Then there's the financial implications. There's been very little in the way of economic modelling on why it should be £40. It seems to just serve to bring Nuneaton and Bedworth into line with rugby, but the social and demographic and economic conditions in this borough are very different. So if the estimated 37% take-up is wrong, and I expect it will be, then that throws out the whole budget estimates. And next year, we've got to find more cuts, so we've got to find more charges. And who is that going to impact the most? The poor and the needy. So little consideration seems to have been given to the basic economic principle that if you charge more for something, less people will take it up. So, Mr. Mayor, once again, the issue is whether this council is on the people's side and on the side of residents. So I urge the council to pass the amended motion tonight and place themselves firmly on the side of the people.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Councillor Elliott, please.
As a keen environmentalist, I was really disturbed when this green bin charge was first suggested. But all this talk about protecting the most vulnerable residents don't use green bins. They live in flats, shelters. They don't have lawn gardens.
Correct, Elliot.
Stretched to a lawnmower.
Is this a point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Be happy to go to some of my residents and say that to their faces.
Can we keep it points of order? You've all had the training. You all know it's all wrote in the book. So points of order. Councillor Elliott, please.
Residents are not being forced to pay £40 for a green bin. It is not a green bin tax. It's an opt-in. We funded it previously because we had adequate funding. Now we don't. So is it fair that the vulnerable residents subsidise those more affluent residents who can perfectly happily afford £40 a year, as the Leader of the Opposition own evidence shows? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to take a few more speakers, and then we're going to go to vote. Councillor Wilson, are you indicating that you want to speak? All right, okay. I won't be taking any more speakers. I've got some here. Yeah, you get the right to speak, but I'm not taking loads more speakers. So I'm just going to take a few more that I've got here, and then we'll move into vote. Councillor Gustain.
Under the assumption until recently that everyone knew about this, until speaking on social media and asking what people thought of the charge, just to kind of get a grasp of who was paying for it. And then all of a sudden I was inundated with calls and messages asking, what charge? Because again, it hasn't been communicated properly. We've seen In Touch magazines go out when it suits the controlling group's agenda, but on important items that need to go out to the public and every single resident, there's nothing again. So why haven't we told residents? Why has there nothing gone in the paper? I don't know a single person that knew about this apart from my colleagues. I called family to ask if they knew. I wondered if we just missed it in Galley Common, if we hadn't had an In Touch. And they didn't know either. It was news to them. So I'd like to know why we can't put an In Touch out. Well, it's just literally may as well be called the Labour newspaper or the Labour magazine. But we've got a duty to reduce waste and try and reduce waste. And the next generation and our generation need to do every single thing we can, which is what the government's doing and everyone's trying to do. Schools are encouraging it. So what we're telling everyone is now you can either choose if you're not well off, and it's not just people living in flats, it's people on low incomes, people who live in council properties, housing association properties. You can choose what for some people could be a week's shopping bill, or paying a utility bill, or paying a bus pass, or something that you need desperately, or you can recycle your green waste. And what we have seen everywhere, I see it every single day when I go from Galley Common down to Bedworth and I go down Astley Lane, is fly tipping. Fly tipping is everywhere. What do you think is going to happen with this green waste? People are going to chuck it somewhere. They might dump it down the road. They might dump it in a field near the house. They might chuck it in their black bin. What do you expect people to do with it? And also, why should residents foot the bill? Because of your lack of action dealing with fly tippers. If you've ever spent your budget because we have had problems with fly tipping and travellers, and we're wasting money that we could have spent on trying to prevent these things from happening and dealing with them, all we're doing is reactive. We're not doing anything to take preventative measures. We're just wasting money. We're running out of money because we've got issues everywhere. They crop up every couple of months, every single place.
Councillor, I just want to speak on the motion.
Why all of a sudden we're charging residents for something because the council has wasted its money again. You can't run a budget. But again, you'll blame the government, you'll blame someone else, anyone. You've got
in place.
Okay, I would like to know as well. Collect your green bins if you don't want them. So how much will that cost? Have we thought about that? If there is a low uptake, what are we going to do with those green bins? I know
invalid questions. I'm just saying that they're not on the motion.
But it is an important part of the motion. The residents need to know
like I say,
how much that will cost.
Valid questions that can be asked of officers. So we've just on the motion.
Okay, on the motion, please do reconsider what's going to happen if all these green bins go somewhere. Can we sell them? Can we reuse them? Are we just going to burn them? Just think about that.
Like I'm saying, I'm going to take Councillor Jackson, now please.
Thank you tonight, because the Conservatives failed to call this in. If they truly do believe this decision was wrong, they had every opportunity to call this decision in, and they failed to do so. Is that because actually they agree with it, contrary to what they're saying tonight? This amended motion...
Hold on. The goings on in the public gallery, please. I can't have it. Right. Honestly, can't have this in the fair enough, but I can't have it in public gallery. Okay, we're trying to get some business done. So, yeah, if it does carry on, then we'll have to ask the public to leave. Okay, and I don't want that to happen. Councillor Jackson, sorry.
Importantly, what has been put forward in the amendment is not costed. It hasn't, to my knowledge, been signed off by the Section 151 officer, because there are budget implications here. There have been some suggested ways in which we may vary the budget, but nothing concrete. All cabinet meetings, unless containing confidential information, are held in public. I need to say that because there's been a suggestion that meetings are not always held in public. They are only held in private if there are confidential issues. A choice has been given to people about whether they wish to pay £40. Mr. Mayor, an alternative could have been to cease this service completely. The Labour administration decided that we would give a choice to people. I will remind the Conservatives that at their last budget meeting, their last budget proposals included privatising services of this council. And I have to respond to Councillor Ghislaine, I think it was. Apologies to him if it wasn't. But councillors who have said we are not able to run balanced budgets, we have poor budgeting skills, that is not the opinion of the auditors of this council, who say our figures add up and we have a sustainable budget going forward. I need to correct those statements, Mr. Mayor. They weren't actually part of the motion, but they've been said here, and I believe we have a right of reply on those. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to move to Councillor.
I've indicated twice to speak, including Rob Troman.
I'm going to move to I'm going to move to Councillor Wilson now for the right to reply. Then I'm going to
sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I know you indicated, Councillor Condacor. I know you indicated
to speak.
I know you indicated, Councillor Wilson.
I have yelled at officers after a meeting because I
Councillor Condacor.
I have indicated to speak.
I know you indicated to speak, but I think there's been enough discussion. So therefore, I am. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson. Councillor. No. Councillor Wilson, would you like to do your reply, please? Well, not that I've seen. Not that I've seen. I'm not getting into discussion about it. I think there's been enough discussion. I think there's been enough discussion. Councillor Concourt, can you leave the chamber? No. Listen. Right. As the mayor now, I'm now going to ask that the member no further be heard, and could I have a seconder for that motion, and then that will be voted on without discussion. If the motion is carried, the named member may not speak further at the meeting. So can I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second it, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Longden.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. To be fair, I did see Councillor Condicore indicate, even at the time when I was moving... Mr Mayor, to be clear, I disagree with the tantrum we've just experienced, but to be fair to the councillor, he did indicate.
Possibly.
And I don't defend him by any stretch of the imagination.
Councillor Wilson, you possibly did, but I didn't see it. I've put something forward. It's been seconded. So, Councillor Wilson. Right. So I've put something forward. It's been seconded by Councillor Longden. Going to move to the vote. That the member not be heard. So all those in favour that the member not be heard. Right, just on this item, I'll give Councillor Condicore 3 minutes to do his speech, and then we move into the vote. So Councillor Wilson will have his right to reply, then we move into vote. And I'm not cared who else is indicated.
I think it's important that we request the Cabinet member to reconsider the bin charges, particularly on these less vulnerable people. Asking for £40 right at the beginning of the year, in January, is a dreadful thing to do. And when we considered this at Cabinet, there was very little debate. There wasn't alternatives. And one of the fundamental things we need to do when we take a decision is to think long and hard about the alternatives, and if we do need to charge for garden waste, what the right charge is. Because I understand the pressures the council is under. I understand it has lost £1.3 million of revenue support grant, and the council is expected to work a lot harder. If we look at the issue, the green waste bins cost around £700,000 to collect. And we have 35,000 people using the service. That is £20 for everyone using the service. And so if the council had difficulty balancing the budget, my first thing would be, what would happen if we charge people £20?
This is to speak on the motion that is put in front of you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the vulnerable. And the motion is looking about vulnerable residents. And so actually moderating the charge to £20 is one of the things that we should have looked at the start. And if we can, we should look for the vulnerable residents, or hopefully all residents, actually charging them £20, which is what the service costs. To actually expect people to pay a premium, i.e. £40 for a £20 service, is a benefit to the council and a disbenefit for the less vulnerable. So I really think we should have had a proper debate right at the beginning, and particularly considering the vulnerable people, the people who are in bungalows, barely managing to scrape ends meet, don't have a car but have a large garden. What are we doing for those? When Hinckley introduced their charge, and they did have to introduce a charge, they introduced a £24 charge, and they spent £200...
I'm interested in what Hinckley's done. This is on the motion that's in front of you.
How many times do you interrupt the Labour charge? They spent £200,000 to get it right, and their scheme is very successful. We are failing to do. A carpenter measures twice and cuts once. We just cut on a guess with this. £40 is stupid. We talk about how this decision came about. The Cabinet has informal Cabinet meetings. There are meetings where things are talked about, like this green waste charge, informally, and these meetings happen once a month in private. And this is where this charge got set. And this is where we have failed. And I understand why Labour want to make the charge. I understand the trouble with the vulnerable, and I understand the people barely making their council tax payments. But when we look at other items, this money is not being reinvested in something like cutting down liability orders, cutting down minimum council tax payments. Where is this money going? It is going into many of the council's own mistakes. I think I'll leave it there before you interrupt me again.
Councillor Wilson, right to reply, please.
Mr Mayor, and this to be conducted, I think we're at 15 minutes before cut-off point. In responding to the debate, no, we didn't call it in because we knew what we were going to get. You were going to overturn it. And we have focused our efforts, considerable efforts actually, in our budget proposals, which will be revealed in the next few weeks, at actually stopping the damage that you are causing to the most vulnerable in our society. You talk the talk about protecting the vulnerable. It is this side that walks the walk in protecting the vulnerable. And I won't take any lessons from the other side, because in my job, I really do see the vulnerable, and I know what goes on. So don't try and paint me out to be one of these Tories who doesn't care, because there are more champagne socialists on that side and more caring and compassionate Conservatives on this side than others give credit for. Now, privatisation. I think it's laughable that the leader of the council comes up with that when, under the guise of externalising, she has already externalised the climbing tower, so we're now tied into that, and she is externalising, possibly, the town centres. Now, Councillor Elliott is the gift that keeps on giving. We've had reserves are for earthquakes. We've had mortgages are only the aspiration of the privileged. Now we have that the green bin tax won't affect the most vulnerable because most of the people aren't vulnerable in our society. Well, tell that to the people who are amongst the living in wards, living in houses, who are amongst the most top 10% in the country of the most deprived at all. Go and say that to the people on the streets of her ward in Barpool, where only 371 have taken it up. Is she saying that the other 3,700 are all well off, that they can afford £40 a month? That's a ridiculous claim to make from someone who is supposed to represent those residents. It might be all right that £40 can be paid from someone who lives on, say, Lutterworth Road or the Watling Street, but people who live on the Circle, on Tompkinson Road, in the Slough, in Abbey, £40 means the difference between putting food on the table, whether they can feed their children, whether they can actually put electricity in the meter, whether they can actually send their kids to school with a cooked meal. That's the difference, but the party opposite can't even get that right. They berate people, they try and trap people in a cycle of dependency, but when people actually try and do something to help those in most need, what do? They tax them. It's the typical Labour response. If it moves, tax it. If it breathes, tax it. And if it doesn't move, we'll tax it again. Now, this is a damning indictment of your policy. And I hope you get the same figures that I do, because I've asked for them. It makes very interesting reading. Because we only have, against your forecast of 37% of people who will take up this charge, as of midnight, 26.5% of people have taken up your charge, have actually paid your tax, out of the 35,000 people who currently are supposed to be doing it. Now, that is a real slash in a cut to services when you haven't looked, as we have, line by line through each single piece of expenditure of this council. You are happy to pay out £800,000 for a civic hall, but charge residents £40 to have their green bins emptied. You are happy for residents to fork out £200,000 for a climbing tower no one uses, rather than allow people to use their green bins. You would rather hit everyone, because it is more or less a universal service, than actually look line by line at every single discretionary service we offer and protect the interests of residents. You have sacrificed residents and hidden behind poverty of this council, when it is this council which, if it had made proper financial decisions in the past, would be far better off in dealing with the issues we face now. You refused to even talk to large companies who wanted to come into our town, didn't even respond to a letter. If they had come here instead of going to North Warwickshire, they could have been paying hundreds of thousands of pounds in business rates. Instead, you sacrificed that because you couldn't respond, wouldn't pay a stamp to return the letter, and instead that business went elsewhere. If that business had come in, we might not have been paying this charge now. It's decisions like that which prove you are for the few and not the many. It is Labour who run down these services because it is their interest to blame it on everyone else. I support...
Mr Mayor, right, hold on, I've got... is yours a point of order?
It's a point of order, yes.
Okay.
Prolong it any longer than necessary, but during his tirade, Councillor Wilson actually said we're charging £40 a week, and therefore people can't put food on the table and all that rest of it. I'm not paying £40 a week. I'm not paying £40 a month. I'm paying £40 a year, about 80 pence. Now, whether that was a slip of the tongue or what, I don't know. But it's on the tape, and it needs to be challenged because it'll go out there as being factual, and it's not factual at all. And as far as the over there, good God, how many more millions?
Councillor Longden.
Point of personal explanation, Mr Mayor.
Hold on, I've got another point of explanation to take first. Councillor Elliott.
I'd understand what a most vulnerable resident is, but to quote made up accounts on social media, to quote things that they've said and attribute them to a Labour councillor is just ridiculous.
Thank you, Member. I do apologise, it was in the heat of the moment, but the point remains it is a one-off charge that people have to pay at once, so it would affect their weekly or monthly budget all at once. If I said it was £40 a week, I do apologise, slip of the tongue, things happen, debates get heated.
So, now we're going to move to a vote on the amendment. So this is the amendment that Councillor Troman's put forward.
For a recorded vote on this vote.
Tonight's meeting, because these are not points of orders.
It is. Constitution did propose that we suspend standing orders in order for the meeting to go on longer than 3 hours. That didn't formally get a seconder. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor, and then I'll go on to the next piece, which is the piece I was going to say next, is that we vote to extend the meeting to conclude tonight's business. So, right. So, we've now got a recorded vote on the amendment.
Okay, if you could indicate for or against the amendment. Councillor Beaumont. Against. Councillor Brindley-Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longden. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wilson. Use your casting vote.
Okay, so I'll use my casting vote on against. So that amendment was lost. Okay. Right, so now we're going to have to move on to a vote to extend to tonight's meeting to conclude tonight's business. Right, so the reason that I'm not having a vote on the actual motion is because it was illegal because of the wording of it. So is that clear for everybody? Okay, right. So now I need to vote on extending the meeting to get tonight's business concluded tonight. So do I until it's done. So do I get a seconder to extend tonight's meeting? All those in favour of extending tonight's meeting? Yeah. Okay. Against? Abstain. Okay, thank you. That's so we'll extend tonight's meeting. I'm going to ask if anybody wants a comfort break before we go on to the next motion. Does anybody want a 5-minute, 10-minute comfort break, and then we'll go on to the next motion? Okay, thank you, Dave. No, I ain't leaving. Councillors, members of the public. I'm going to start now. So, can I ask Councillor Wilson, first signatory to the requisition, to move the third motion, please?
And I thought it was very telling, actually, in moving this motion that we had. And I've heard some of Mrs. Wilson's speeches in the past when she used to be on these benches, and I have to say, one of the best speeches I've ever heard her give, actually, with great passion and enthusiasm for our town centres. We haven't always agreed, but on this one, I think we are at one on wanting to preserve, protect and enhance our markets and our town centres. Now, unfortunately, over the Christmas period, our town centres took a bit of a hammering in terms of their reputation, particularly in terms of cancelling the Christmas markets on on Christmas Eve. And also there is some disquiet amongst traders about what the plans to, and this is Labour's wording, not mine, externalise, so for externalise, read privatise, the market. It may or may not be a good thing, but what is causing concern is the uncertainty about what that entails. Is it going to be given to the market traders to run? I know there are some market traders who are interested in that. Is it going to be put out to tender for some market operator to come in? I've been down to Stratford not too long ago and seen some of the work that private companies do there, and actually they were well attended and run. And it was a nice, pleasant surprise to go and see that. This council needs to clarify, and clarify quickly, what it intends to do with our markets, especially giving the Transforming Nuneaton package which is coming forward, which does enjoy cross-party support. But throughout all the Transforming Nuneaton package, the markets are going to be essential in actually keeping that interest and that life going in our town centres while the town centres are regenerated. And we need that certainty quickly, not just from a point of view of actually what our markets will look like in the future, but also in terms of financial certainty. Because we've just been given an arbitrary figure of £20,000 worth of savings by externalising, but no definition as to what that is going to include. Maybe a cabinet paper coming back later at some stage is what I was told in the meeting with the senior officers. Maybe. And shutting the town market down on what could have been one of the busiest days of the year for a market trader on Christmas Eve was a disaster, because market traders actually wanted to come in, but they weren't offered the option of coming in at normal rates. It had to be at overtime rates. Now, I spoke to the head of paid service about this, and I don't even think the head of paid service quite understands some of the arcane rules and things which went back years, because apparently there are arcane agreements, contracts, ways of working which enable the council to move around days and effectively class them as bank holiday days for the council. But the reasons why have seemed to fall into antiquity. But we are working on perhaps 1950s, 1960s rules when we should be looking at a 21st century operation. And working in the public sector myself, and I know people who work in the private sector, Christmas Eve does not have to be a shutdown day at all. In fact, I think we would have had a great bonus to the town centres if we had have allowed those market traders to go ahead, and if there was some wrangling over whether we put out the markets on that day and having to charge double bubble to the market traders. Why didn't we offer the workers the option of coming in for normal time and then having time off in lieu on another day? That would have been a perfectly acceptable, reasonable business practice. But for whatever reason, through the midst of time, arcane practices are being allowed to continue in this authority, and I hope moving forward the leader of the council, who I believe it's her portfolio for markets and all that, will look at, and overall head of responsibility for the council will look at dragging some of our arcane employment practices back into the 21st century, because our residents expect a 21st century service, not something which drags back to old local government rules dating back from the 50s and 60s and perhaps even further back. Now, some market traders actually use those days before Christmas like a bit of a whale would, getting a bit of blubber in so that they can see themselves through the lean times. Because January is quite often a period where, because we've had Christmas, because people have spent money and they're having to rebuild their finances, get a bit of security, find the money to pay the green bin tax, they can't afford to go out and buy as much as they used to on the markets. And that bit of flexibility that market traders will have built up for themselves in those times is essential to them. And we have cut that off for market traders, people who are proud to come to Nuneaton and Bedworth, say they are market traders in Nuneaton and Bedworth, give you that banter across the tables. We need to actually support our town centres. This cannot continue, Mr Mayor.
Does that have a seconder? Councillor Evans, thank you.
From the motion which has just been proposed by Councillor Wilson, and in doing so I would like to make my speech now. Despite the clear message sent to the Labour administration by the electorate in May, by the people of Bedworth, we still haven't seen any major improvements or plans to improve Bedworth town centre. 54% of Bedworth residents who voted in that election voted for a Conservative manifesto that promised to relocate Bedworth Market back into the heart of our community and our town centre in All Saints Square. Despite the message sent by electorate, I have seen nothing from this Labour administration. It shows they lack ambition, aspiration and a vision for our town centres in the borough. When myself and other Bedworth councillors alongside Craig Tracy MP met with owners of small businesses in Bedworth, the one thing that was continually raised was the image of Bedworth town centre, in particular All Saints Square. There was not one single business owner who spoke against the market being moved back outside. Having the market back outside in All Saints Square would make the town centre look more vibrant. I think we have a really, fantastic, unique opportunity in Bedworth. A market in All Saints Square, overlooked by the almshouses and the church, would really reinstate the feeling that Bedworth is a traditional market town. And let me highlight some of the conspiracy theories that it's not feasible or possible to put the market back into All Saints Square. Every Christmas, for the light switch on, we have numerous charity stalls which are set up by the council and have access to electricity. Secondly, the market was temporarily relocated.
On the motion that's in front. So this is about externalising, and then the 24th of December. Sorry, but I've got to get this done tonight.
This motion that the first sentence is, this council expresses its concern that the Labour administration appears to have no vision for our town centres. I'm speaking about why I believe this Labour administration has no vision for our town centres, in which case I will carry on.
So it either goes on the externalising or on the 24th.
Opinion that I do not believe that this council meeting this evening is being run fairly, and in principle I will stop speaking because I'm not speaking in a full council meeting which is not being run fairly. You would not get this, you would not have that against Labour members. Sorry.
Councillor Jackson.
To this. Labour's vision for our town markets is already being implemented, with Bedworth seeing new external graphics and a major clean-up to improve its appearance, and with the old stores being replaced with pop-up stores to increase its flexibility and capacity. And yes, We have undertaken a staff restructure, creating a senior commercial operations post tasked with driving revenue through sourcing new traders for both of our markets and looking at opportunities for niche markets too. I could go on, Mr Mayor, but quite rightly you would hold me to the 3 minutes I have, and I need to use my time effectively. Nuneaton Market is a gem in our town centre and one I will support, along with the market in Bedworth too. I share Mrs Wilson's views in that regard. Mr Mayor, I wish to move the following amendment, copies of which are available. I so move, Mr Mayor, that the first sentence and part of the second sentence is removed so that the amendment reads, this council resolves that Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day of this council. It was always going to be in any event, Mr Mayor.
Does that get a seconder?
Mr Mayor. We all want the best for our markets in our town centres. On the next year, this year's market,
Order, Mr. Mayor.
Can I move the vote?
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Right, that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Golby.
Said that he wasn't actually going to speak again, and he's just spoken again. And we haven't had any reasonable debate on any of the amendments or the main motion.
The vote.
Yeah, and then we're going to go for a recorded vote.
I've been to the Nuneaton Market probably for most of my 53 years on this earth at Christmas Eve. It is really, really important, the market. And I was contacted by residents, particularly one who's actually tried to trade on the market just before Christmas. And he was told by this council that the council wasn't taking any bookings for the Nuneaton Market for the 4 weeks before Christmas. The council has got an attitude that if it's awkward, it will try not to do it. And which is why I welcome a focus, hopefully by the Labour and the Tory groups, on getting the market having a more commercial idea of how it's run. We had Alan Ottey, an award-winning market manager, a town centre manager, do so much to actually try and grow the market. We won awards in 2008-9 periods, and I would really love us to get back to those days. And I do hope in changing this motion or passing the Tory motion, we actually have a working group on which I and other keen people are allowed to take part to support our wonderful market. Because when we start demolishing parts of the co-op, when we start demolishing parts of Vicarage Street, we are going to damage trade in town. And it's going to be all hoardings, and the market's going to take yet another hit. During that period, we need our new market solution to be cheap, so we get as many traders in as possible, well advertised, and we need the market to effectively be our lifeboat until we actually get through to the other side.
Clarify. One, are you stating that this does not alter or negate the original motion? Is that your ruling as mayor? Okay. And are you also ruling that there has been sufficient debate on this item? Because sufficient debate has to take place, in the mayor's opinion, before you can move to the vote. Again, only myself and the leader of the council does not, in my view, constitute a debate. It is a statement and a reply, not a debate.
Yeah, I am going to take this because it's only a friendly amendment. I'm going to move to the vote. Yeah, I'm going to say that we've debated it. So I've also already heard that you want a recorded vote. Is that right? Point of order. Yeah.
11 states that the original motion would have a right of reply, which I believe is Councillor Wilson's.
Right, so we're moving to vote on the amendment. Right.
No, you're moving. It's
Right, so we're voting on whether to have the vote. Okay. Right. So, recorded vote. Simone.
Okay. Councillor indicate for or against moving to the vote. Councillor Beaumont. For. Councillor Brindley Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Okay, it's casting vote for. So so we're now going to move to the vote on the amendment.
Councillor Wilson asked you about this, but I would beg you to reconsider, because I'm afraid it is in black and white. It does in fact negate the meaning of the first motion. I appreciate it might be a motion we might support, but it does in fact negate it.
It doesn't, and well, that's my ruling. It doesn't, so we now moving to Councillor Wilson's right to reply.
Well, instead of taking the opportunity that was afforded to her as leader of the council to set out what her vision was for Nuneaton Town Centre and for Bedworth Town Centre, put some meat on the bones about what externalising the town centres means, yet again, as we have seen tonight, the leader of the council has taken the opportunity to try and shut down debate to something which is uncomfortable for her to debate. Because residents out there know that our town centres and markets need some tender loving care, to put it mildly, but it appears that this council doesn't share that view either. Now, I recounted this at Cabinet a while ago, I took a colleague of mine at work into Nuneaton Town Centre because we had a difficult meeting and we thought we'll go somewhere for lunch. And she used to be a resident of Nuneaton, now moved back to her hometown of Coventry. I took her around, it was a market day, and she said to me, "Chris, what happened to the market? It used to be so vibrant, there used to be more stalls, it used to be all the way up this street." And I thought, you know what, that's really sad for someone to come in after a couple of years of not coming in, and that was their first impression of walking into our markets and into our town centres. What the leader of the council has done is say this council resolves that Tuesday the 24th of December will be a normal working day. But she has not had any vision, no ambition and no aspiration for what our markets will look like. We are about to go through a multi-million-pound regeneration project, particularly for Nuneaton, and I hope, as much as I support a transforming Nuneaton project, if there is a transforming Bedworth project, I say bring it on, I will support that as well. But the markets will be the sticking plaster that keeps people coming back to our town centres while those regeneration works go on. And these regeneration works, if they go ahead, and we've now seen the master plan which has gone out, it's no longer confidential. If we are to deliver that vision, and it's a vision I support, and the leader knows that because I've sat in the same meeting with her, we need to use all the levers of this council to make that happen and keep residents coming back into our town centres while that happens, because it's going to take years to build these things up. Nowhere tonight has the leader of the council taken the opportunity to do that. The motion she has put forward is meaningless. It's not worth the paper it's written on. She could have saved this council 10 pence in photocopying charges, and just actually, if you don't agree with the motion, because you don't want to actually put any flesh on the bone, vote against it. Don't waste 10p on something which actually achieves nothing. Because our market traders expected better, our residents expected better, but unfortunately they've got the same answer: we aren't open for business anymore from the Labour administration. Until you are willing to put flesh on the bone, until you are willing to say to residents, you know what, we're going to go for this full pelt, and until you are willing to actually say what you mean about externalising the markets, residents will not believe you. And that's a great shame, because I have faith in the Transforming Nuneaton project. A lot of people have worked very hard to try and get it off the ground, and it would be a shame if through the actions of this council not showing that vision and leadership, we fail in something which we so desperately need. So I won't support her amended motion as it stands, because it achieves nothing. That's why she could have had cross-party support if she'd have actually said externalising markets means A, B and C, or actually we'll bring a report to council, or it will be in a cabinet report, and we can debate that then. But nothing. And that's a deep shame, because she's let our markets down on that front, and I think the market traders deserve better, and so do the people sat in that gallery who have taken 3.5 hours to watch this show, and they haven't actually achieved a lot tonight. It's a real shame, but to be honest, it appears that Labour have run out of steam and they're just holding the fort until 2020 because they've given up. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wilson. So we're now going to move to the vote on the amendment. Do you want a recorded vote?
Sorry, point of order. The amendment, or we are voting on the amendment becoming the substantive, because in which case there needs to be a vote now for it to become the substantive, and then another vote once it becomes a substantive. Could you clarify? I think it would be helpful. I know we've been here quite a while. Thank you.
First of all, got a vote on the amendment to see whether it's won or lost.
To become then a substantive?
Yes. So now we're moving to the vote on the amendment. Right, can we just do a show of hands on this then, or are we doing a recorded vote? Recorded vote, okay.
Okay. So indicate for or against the amendment. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Brindley-Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Casting vote for. Right, so that's now the substantive motion. Right, so we're now opening debate on substantive motion. Any councillor wish to speak? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you for hours today, and this motion does absolutely nothing useful. I think we should amend it to actually have the council work on Mondays to Fridays normally.
Now substantive motion. I'm just going to pass on some words really from the market traders, because they're absolutely disgusted with you lot. They
Hey, Councillor Jackson.
To the new substantive motion.
Can you just stick to the substantive motion? So this is just the council resolves that Tuesday, 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day of this council.
Actually, building up to that, if you'd let me draw a breath at least. They're absolutely disgusted with the way that the Labour administration are running things for them at the moment, and they don't get a chance to voice much opinion. I mean, I can't even call it a motion because it really isn't. The sentence that is now in front of us that the council resolves Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 will be a normal working day for this council will be absolutely no comfort whatsoever to those traders who lost significant sums of money on the most important trading day of the year in the trading period that's just gone. I spent a lot of time actually on the market. I do walk around, I talk to people regularly, and the opinion of this administration is really, you know, it couldn't really get much worse, to be honest. And again, you should have saved yourself the 10p. Maybe you could have gone out and bought someone a cup of tea out there and had a chat with them or something. You know, it's the cost of a tea bag. They are at their wits' end. And again, this motion, this sentence, is no comfort to anybody that is on their uppers. We pretend in the chamber that you're actually listening, but all you've done is shut down debate. You are not listening because you won't let us speak. This is not listening. This is not allowing us to bring a message to you for any reason. I mean, I can't even impart to you the feeling that is going on out there. And again, referring to the motion, this is absolutely useless to them. They don't want Tuesday the 24th of December 2019 to be a normal working day. It's already going to be a normal working day anyway. They wanted it last year and they didn't want to have to pay £300 for a set of stalls. The vitriol that the residents actually put forward as well, because you denied them the market, that didn't go down very well. People are going to remember this, and I hope they do, because you talk about opportunity and you take opportunity away. You talk about being for equal and for everybody, and yet you just stack the odds entirely against people. People can't work, people can't feed their families, they end up on universal credit. I'm referring to the 24th of December. People lost a lot of money, and again, I'll repeat it again, the people on the market find this cold comfort and useless, and it just shows the fact that you have actually submitted this as an amendment to a perfectly reasonable motion that was submitted to get the message across that we are supporting the markets, we do support people. The fact that you've actually submitted this waste of paper just shows that you're not willing to support people. You've put things in a budget that you've said you're going to rationalise the market. They don't know whether they're coming or going from one week to the next, because they don't know whether you're going to pull the rug from underneath them or not. You have not shared any information with anybody. You're supposed to be supporting small businesses. This doesn't support them. Yeah, I am. Yep. This with the market traders. It doesn't support them. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of their time. They know it. That's why they're walking with their feet. So whether Tuesday the 24th of December, as per your amendment, will be a normal working day of the council is of no consequence if we don't have any market stall holders left to stand out there and work on Tuesday the 24th of December 2019. And if we don't, it's all...
Right. Councillor Phillips, you indicated, so I'm just going to take one more speaker and then we're moving to vote.
Right, be open on December the 24th. I hear everything that's said over there. I've listened to everything all evening. Now let's move to the vote.
Simone? Okay, we'll just have a show of hands on this then. So this is moving to the vote of substantive motion. Okay, so we're taking the vote on the motion first.
Mr. Mayor, what...
Right, so we've taken the vote on the amendment, which is a substantive motion. Right, so all those in favour, could you raise your hands? Against? Abstain? Okay. So, yeah, okay. Right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, councillors, that concludes tonight's business. Wish you a safe journey home and thank you for tonight. Thank you.